family homes, as well as what I'm assuming is the expansion of Kings Ridge 50 or 60 homes, has already been incorporated in this projection. And the reason why I asked that question is that only because I was here for several of the meetings, I thought that there was a clicker count or something, and in terms of the traffic going up and down. And I remember people saying, well, that was done, I think, the wrong week in June, or it wasn't when school was in, or whatever. So I'm trying to deal with all of that in terms of understanding, knowing full well that my big fear is, as this young lady mentioned here, Dutton and Adams. Sure. And I think that whoever it was that John said, maybe it's better just to leave it vacant to enhance the community as it is, might be the answer.
Thank you, Fred.
Answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the project that Mr. Mosheri is proposing is consistent with the future planning efforts of Oakland Township in terms of the type of project that he wants to propose. It is master planned for a high-density conservation development, very specifically addressed in our master plan as a senior housing project. The traffic studies, as Mr. Carter was indicating, looks at a number of basic facts. One is the historic growth of traffic in a corridor. Two, a snapshot of what's out there today. Okay, that was that traffic count back in June, that, in school, out of school, things of that nature. And three, they look at projecting traffic into the future. So all three of those elements are looked at. It's just not based on a little snapshot of what went on at any particular time, but it looks at all of the traffic and projects it into the future also, and then comes to a conclusion as to what this project will do at the intersection and its influence on the traffic patterns in the area. And the conclusions by a traffic study and an independent review of that traffic study is it will have an impact, but it won't degrade the level of service that you currently experience out there today. Now, part of that, of this traffic statistics they look at out there are, because part of that traffic counts that are there today and part of the projections are trucks, ambulances, schools, all those emergency vehicles, all those people going to work. Now, admittedly, when you have a independent living facility, it's a lot different than a nursing home. As the young lady spoke earlier, Susan, thank you. I think she was referencing a lot of nursing home facilities that have a lot of dementia, a lot of care facilities where you have a more, response in a living unit. Because when you have a independent living, assisted living facility, you don't have the frequency, because the residents that Mr. Mosheri has been proposing aren't the seniors that need care every day. They are not nursed, they are not bedridden, they are not, they live independently. They need some assistance. That's what he has been proposing. It is not a nursing care facility. My mom lives in an independent care facility. Every once in a while she'll mention to me, and I talk to her weekly, yeah, we had an ambulance here earlier this week. It's rare. It's rare, and it's a 3-story American House facility. She lives in the Downriver area. Now, I'm basing on my experience.
Right. Well, let me.
That. So I'm suggesting to you that there are facilities there that require a lot more emergency vehicle attendance. And what Mr. Mosheri is proposing is not one of those facilities. Will there be emergency vehicles? Yes. There will definitely be emergency vehicles, ambulances that will go to this facility. I'm not going to debate that one bit, because there will be. Are there more that come to a nursing home? Yes. Based on what I've seen in the traffic information that I've looked at and trying to figure out the best traffic generation numbers to look at for this facility, as I did for you, as you had requested, the numbers for these types of facilities are lower than would be for a nursing home.
Now, when we talk about the standards used by traffic engineers, the ITE manual version, whatever that is, of what year that was, those standards distinctly note that there's a difference between single-family homes, assisted living facilities, nursing care facilities, and such.
Yes.
They factor into their trips per day calculation, if my understanding is correct, based on the type of use, the type, in this case, the type of residential housing that is being considered, and that's factored into the number. If the residential housing being considered is the type where you would have workers and employees, that's factored in. If the type of residential use that's being considered is the type where you would have a greater propensity for ambulance runs, that's factored in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So whether we take the counts, and we might naively look at that and say, well, an ambulance is different than a car. We don't see, perhaps in our calculations, that that has already been factored into the trips per day that's used in that standard. And that may be where the point of confusion exists. But we do know in this case, this addresses a few of the questions that were raised. This is not a nursing home. This is not a full-time care. The residents are not patients. They are not people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia or physical disabilities that require a greater level of care. We've already gone through this in prior meetings. It's part of the applicant's proposal. It's not like the applicant can change that down the road. And if the residents of this community were to require such a heavy amount of care, they would have to move out of this community because it doesn't accommodate that. Is that right?
That's correct.
So it's sort of age in place.
I would just like to clarify since
No, it's good.
No?
Thanks. Going to Craig Bluff's comments, I think Craig said 60% more trips. He was saying that you had come up with a different calculation. I didn't hear you say 60% increase in trips. If I recall, the discussion was about the additional trips per day as one element of the discussion, and there is a higher density proposed in this plan than would be in the 61 single-family residences that would be under the existing zoning, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But the higher density here, the trade-off that we're being asked to consider is that with a higher density comes a lower impact on traffic during peak hours, a higher impact on traffic overall during the day, but spread out through the day because of the nature of the restrictions, the age restrictions of this community. So a lower at peak times, morning and afternoon peak times, but a higher during the day. Do I have all that right?
Yes.
Is that the understanding that the rest of the... Sorry.
That's a phone. That's what we're expecting.
Sorry.
Daddy, you phone you again.
That's what I used to do, that's right. Sorry about that. Is that the understanding the rest of the commissioners have? Yes. So help me with this 60%.
I'm working on it.
Craig, can you help me with this?
I get it. Gary just had he had two items on this. This is your report.
Show it to him, because I'm going to ask him to comment on it.
Is that the December, is that the recap room?
This is December.
Yes, yes.
So you get single-family trips at 9.57.
Right.
Times 61 is 584. You had attached senior housing at 3.48 times 284 is 988.
Yeah, that's why, but that's why the
Well,
planning,
you said,
that's why the planning commission last time asked me to break this down
right
differently
in another column.
to assisted living, which is only 2.74 trips.
Correct. which I agree. So this, right now, is 69% increase, but when you add the next column, it should decrease slightly.
Yes.
But it won't decrease massively, it'll decrease slightly.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
So
sort of figure
that's why I
out.
was just asking, when you do the updated one here, it's 2.74.
Is what I have.
The
Yeah.
table attached,
Well,
ITB,
that you have in your report
2.02.
is 2.02, but in our research, we found it to be different by definition to 2.74 for assisted living, for what we understood it to be. So it shows a reduction, but okay, I
So
understand
the
what you're
only thing I
saying.
had mentioned was if you could just add the total number of trips so that you get both sets of information. Because you got peak hours, you just don't have totals.
Right.
Right, well, we might look at that from both perspectives, right? Right, you might look at it from a total traffic perspective, which I believe the applicant has stated by way of their traffic study is a 24, if I remember off the top of my head, 24% increase in total traffic per day. Am I right there?
That's correct.
But during peak hours, it's lower, and we might consider here on the commission both numbers. What is it during the peak times, and what is it in total?
Correct. Larry's report will be a little bit with the Dominic's. So I just thought if you could have the same comparison numbers by having the totals, you have peak and you have totals.
Yeah.
It might be 40 instead of 23, whatever it was.
And I think you can appreciate that we didn't just use Larry's report, we also have the full traffic study in front of us, which is why I asked the question I asked earlier about whether that study replaces the prior one. We now have two studies, one provided by the applicant, actually three, two provided by the applicant, one revised, and one provided by the township hired consultant that we hired on the basis of both the commission's concern for this traffic issue and the public's, as stated here many, many times. We have that to consider. Larry looked at the same stuff.
That's what I was just stating with Larry. So he's got it already. He brought it right back. Uncle. He's going to put the totals in his next report and everybody's got it.
Okay. All right, just a point of clarification. And then you had also said, Mr. Blust, natural resources are not part of this. Well, I think you were responding to a comment I made that on the assumption that we see this again, we will see it in the light of a full site plan review and so forth, where we're looking at a number of other things in detail. This is a PRRO rezoning request, and that's what we're considering at this point as a recommendation to the Township Board. Certainly, the natural resources on this parcel and the use of the natural resources under this proposal by the applicant are something we're considering at this point. I didn't mean to imply anything different. I'm sorry if I did. A tree survey and inventory of trees is something that would come on a later submittal if it gets that far. It may not get that far, and it may not be necessary. I think we can consider the proposal as it stands now, and if the commission feels that, and if they concur with your view that it'd be impossible to accommodate this proposed use, and it would create a problem for the applicant. If the applicant can't build what they have proposed to build, then they're going to have to retract or give up whatever they, progress they've made there and come at it again. But they have to address the tree issue and other natural resources on this property.
But it's a segment of 24.04 that you have to verify if you're going to increase the density behind, as a variance, beyond the 5 units per acre, which the master plan states. In order to do that, you have to prove that it doesn't impact natural resources, where that would be the part of it.
First off, you're leaving off a lot of criteria there in terms of, and that's part of our discussion that we'll follow. But certainly we have to consider the eligibility of this under the PRRO. We have to consider whether it meets the criteria, whether it's more strict and limiting, and so on and so forth.
This is special land use. This is not PPRO. PPRO says go to special land